Welcome, everyone. My name is Deborah Shea, and I will be moderating our session today on nonprofit and economic development. We have a great panel of second-year All-Stars, Tony, Sara, and Vicki, who will share their stories in a bit, but I'd like to give you a little bit of a run-through of how the next 45 minutes will unfold. So first, I'm going to share a little bit about the Career Development Office, the CDO as we're calling it, then give a brief overview of what economic development actually is, and then the panelists are going to share their stories and their journeys of what they did pre-SOM and what life has been like for them over the last year and a half here at SOM. Then we're going to ask some questions here among ourselves, and then we are going to open it up for all of you to be able to ask questions of the panelists. We're going to then have a wrap up at the end, and hopefully the questions that you have and the information that you want to glean will be recognized by the end of our time. So without further ado, let me just give you a little brief overview of what the CDO is all about. So I joined SOM in the Career Development Office 6 months ago as a career coach. And I work with, and my teammates work with, full-time MBAs on their career development and their search strategies. I might be biased, but I think that the CDO provides really terrific resources on both the coaching side, and then our counterparts are the employer partners. And they are the people responsible for connecting to all of the companies that come here to present, that come here to interview, that we connect with on treks. They post jobs, so there's a really great balance that the two bring to the overall resource for the students. So what I'd like to do is have the panel give a sense of what their backgrounds are and where they've been and what their journeys have been like. And I'd like to start with Tony first, and you can introduce yourself and take it away.
Great. Thanks, Deborah.
Sure.
So, as the nameplate suggests, my name is Tony. I'm originally from Australia, and my undergraduate studies were in law and finance. Leading from my undergraduate studies, I got a job in consulting with Deloitte in Sydney, Australia, and then proceeded to spend about 6 years working with Deloitte in a niche business unit, which combines tax with consulting. And it took me all over the world, Australia, Singapore, and ending up in America. I realized, however, during that process a few years ago that my real passion lay in development economics, and in particular, the intersection between academic development economic work and implementation on the ground to help seek to overcome and alleviate extreme poverty around the world. To that extent, I looked into getting a graduate degree. I was weighing up between various MPA, MPP, and MBA opportunities, mainly in the northeast of America. In the end, I decided to come to Yale to pursue an MBA, which is, I'm sure, something that we'll discuss a little further as we go through this panel.
For sure.
But I focused a lot of my time while here over the last year and a half, I'm in my second year at the moment, in pivoting my career into this field. I've had the opportunity to work in Sierra Leone, Zambia. Vicki and I are making a trip to India shortly, as well as work in Sri Lanka. And a lot of these opportunities wouldn't have been available to me had it not been for coming to Yale and the community and opportunities that are available as part of the MBA program here. I'm weighing up still what my future will bring, but I do have opportunities to return to India to work with a development economics firm there. Alternatively, work more on the policy side here in America. So that's a little background on
Thank you very much. Vicki.
Awesome. Thanks, Deborah. So my name is Vicki Zhang. I am born in China, but I moved to the United States when I was 3 years old, so I've spent most of my life here. I went to college at Penn State and majored in finance and economics. And straight out of college, I decided to join Vanguard, which some of you may know is a pretty large investment management firm. So I worked at that company for about 6 years prior to SOM in a variety of roles around internal strategy, corporate finance, and product development. But as I was looking to see what was next in my career, I sort of realized that there were gaps in what I was doing and what I wanted to do. both from the perspective of I wanted to do more social impact related investing, and I also wanted to see what a globalized Vanguard would look like. So that's sort of my rationale for coming to business school. And the reason that I really chose SOM is, again, I felt like it would be a great place for me to explore that social impact aspect of what I thought was missing in my career. So while here at SOM, I'm the co-lead for the Net Impact Club. I'm also co-lead of the Economic Development Club. Tony and I have gone to Sierra Leone together. I will be going to India as well to work on a global social enterprise project. So I've gotten a lot of different opportunities to really explore how social impact can fit into my career.
Great, thank you. Sarah.
Thanks. My name is Sara Background. I'm originally from California, went to undergrad there, studied environmental management at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And since then, and coming to SOM, my experience has been with the US federal government. First as a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, doing agroforestry extension with rural farming communities, and then for OPIC, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, which is the US government's Development Finance Institute. There I was an environmental scientist looking at how OPIC's investments impact local populations, environmental risks, kind of looking at everything from infrastructure to small businesses, education, healthcare, kind of everything in between. And what brought me back to business school was I had a lot of on-the-ground experience in Peace Corps, really could see a lot of different types of economic development from my experience at OPIC, but definitely saw a gap in how projects were sustainably managed and how projects might negatively impact vulnerable populations. And I wanted to take my experience and use it to be an investor, be a project manager in the future. So since being at SOM, I've taken the opportunity to actually work on some of the hard skills. So I had an internship in investment banking this summer. I'm taking a lot of finance coursework, trying to kind of complement the on-the-ground development work that I had before.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to leave this to the panel to elaborate on more in-depth view of what economic development is, but just to give you the quick synopsis, it's the process which the economic well-being and quality of life of a nation, region, or local community are improved. And terms like modernization, westernization, industrialization are also interchanged. And the mission, this panel is very involved with the Economic Development Club, and that is to educate, recruit, and build community around creating social impact through economic development. And it stems from efforts across a broad range of fields that cater to interests that span empowerment, international development, policy, infrastructure, and tons more. It's a wide swath. So what I'd like to do is, we touched a little bit here with the intros on some of the questions that I have, so it might not be for all, but the one broad question that I'd love to start out with is for the panel, when you applied to business school, what made you choose SOM? Tony, you want to take that one?
Sure. And just one comment on what you mentioned
go.
there. There was a couple of words in there which I necessarily don't agree with.
Okay.
I think we're all leaders on the Economic Development Club. If you guys disagree with me on this, please let me know. But I don't think I analogize economic development with westernization. I think actually the opposite. Mm-hmm. So that's just to be clear.
Gotcha.
The people who are there, I don't feel like westernizing is necessarily the definition of economic development at all. But why did I choose to come to Yale? So as I mentioned before, I was actually weighing up an MBA as a program as actually my primary question before I even determined which university I would come to. And interestingly, something that actually helped me through that process was a conversation with a professor here at Yale, Professor Mushfiq Mubarak, who Vicky knows very well as well. He's a preeminent development economist from Bangladesh. And I actually reached out to him as part of my application process, just had some questions given that I'd read a lot of his research work and was particularly inspired by some of the things that he'd been able to do. And I had the question for him, does an MBA even make sense for me? And he mentioned that it's worthwhile when you're thinking about programs, not just the direct job that you'll get out of school, but how it will position you in 10, 20, 30, 40 years' time. It's something that sits on your resume for the rest of your life, and as such, carries significant weight and cachet. As I thought through that process, I realized an MBA did make sense to me, particularly at Yale. And it was for two reasons in the end that I chose Yale once I determined that an MBA was the right course of action. The first was the interaction that SOM, the School of Management, has with the broader community of Yale. The ability to take classes, interact with professors, and just generally be part of the university is something that's very tangible on a day-to-day basis. I just came right before this presentation from a conversation with postdocs at the Macmillan Center, which is a center that looks at history, social history, and part of the political science department. I frequently enjoy going to presentations at Jackson, which is the School of Global Affairs, and I have a lot of friends who are over there. And this is not something unique to me. I would say the vast majority of my classmates take advantage of a lot of opportunities that are available in being part of such a preeminent institution such as Yale. The second reason I chose to come here was the brand name. As I mentioned before, when you get an MBA, it's something that sticks on your resume for the rest of your life. Given that my passion was to pursue a career in international development, the name Yale carries with it a lot of weight and opens a lot of doors, which I think would add extra value. Coming to school is a significant investment, so I want to ensure that I get the maximum ROI on that, and I think Yale as a name helps. So,
Thank you very
that
much.
was some of my thoughts.
Vicky, is there anything else that you wanted to expand upon from what you shared before?
Yeah, I think I shared that one of the main reasons why I chose SOM was for the social impact aspect of it. These past 2 years have really been open exploration for me, so I've really valuable that chance. I'd say the other thing is piggybacking off of what Tony said. The number of people that you're going to be able to meet here, that you're going to be able to connect with in the future as either like a part of your network or future employers is a little bit unreal in terms of their caliber. I've gotten to work with a few of our executives and residents at SOM, and it's just been really inspiring to see their career path and see where I could potentially model myself after them as well.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I actually think one of the main factors in even applying to SOM, and certainly why I chose to come, really had to do with my background and being kind of like a typical non-traditional candidate. I didn't do consulting, I didn't do banking. I wasn't coming from an undergraduate program or a sector that a lot of people got MBAs in. And I didn't ever want to feel like I had to lie or sort of mislead on my application process. I wanted to be who I was with the background I had, acknowledge the gaps that I had sort of academically, and then use the MBA for kind of all it's worth. And I felt like SOM really saw me for that in ways that other programs didn't. And I think even since coming here and visiting or meeting so many other classmates who have such diverse backgrounds, it's really obvious that recruiting from a diverse population is a priority for SOM. And so that was something that I really valued and has come to be true. And then the other piece of kind of picking SOM is really just echoing kind of what Tony said about the brand name. Working internationally, an MBA from a school in the US doesn't always mean the same thing as it does to US employers, but a graduate degree from Yale definitely means something. And so, understanding that I was going to get that, high quality MBA experience while also holding the Yale name was really important to me.
Thank you. One of the questions that oftentimes comes up is, what's the culture here? So if you could describe, Tony, we'll ask you to start.
I'm going to pass this one down.
You're gonna pass the baton down?
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah, are you gonna go for it?
Sure. I think that the best way to describe the culture is that it can kind of be whatever you want it to be. There's a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. Like the truth is, at Yale, a lot of people recruit for consulting. A lot of people who are very mission-driven, socially minded, go into consulting, go into investment banking for some really interesting reasons. And then there's other people who, take that and want it to be a more kind of immediate career interest. And so there's such a diversity of interests, experiences. You can be active, kind of extending to the broader Yale community. You can be active in sports. I know that I'm on the cycling team. I know that Tony does some of that as well. And so I think it's kind of what you can make it. That being said, I think kind of a more continuous reputation that I found to be true is just the people are really like nice and open and welcoming, and you can kind of meet whoever. I know that that's not a vibe that I've gotten at other schools, but it's something that has kind of continued to be true here.
Great, thank you. So we talked a little bit about this before, but maybe it would be interesting for the prospective students to hear, did you all have a clear goal when you were applying to SOM? If not, how did you demonstrate the reasons why you wanted to get your MBA? Vicki, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can definitely take that one. So coming into my MBA, I wasn't really sure if I was going to be making a pivot or if I was just wanting to expand my current responsibilities at Vanguard, which is the firm that I worked at prior. So I really came in with an open mind of, I want to explore this social impact investing type space, but how I utilize that knowledge is still up in the air for me right now. I think longer term, I'm definitely going to be transitioning, but there's a lot of things I can also be doing while I work in the investment management industry as well. So just really trying to figure out those dynamics for me.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to add in?
Sure, I'll just touch on, I kind of touched on this a little bit with my reasoning, but something that sort of I had in mind through my application process that I'm still thinking a lot about is how any type of investment, whether it's public, private, impact investing, more commercial, regardless, how is it done sustainably? I was a practitioner before, and so I was thinking a lot about how do environment, social, and governance factors come in and be meaningful, and that's something that was sort of my intention early on, and I've sort of practiced while I'm here. What do those things mean? How do they translate into various sectors of finance? How can they be practiced? And kind of what does the industry look like? And that's something that definitely was my goal through the application process, all of the essays I wrote as I was interviewing. And I've continued to work on here and found a lot of support for that type of interest in research.
Great. One of the things that Tony mentioned was having a conversation with a professor even before you got here. Have the three of you found connections with either certain classes or professors that has even enriched your interest and enthusiasm for this space, for economic development? Are there any particular professors that have you've really hooked into?
I'm happy to start off. So yes, it was a clear goal of mine when I started the program to try and create connections with professors here. And I made it quite an explicit goal to do so. So to that end, I've been doing research work with Professor Ushfik Mubarak, another development economist, Professor Kevin Donovan, and just generally the student to faculty ratio here, combined with the fact that we are in New Haven, and so the professors are in the same building the vast majority of the week, means that having organic conversations and interactions with faculty is the norm, not the exception, which I do think is a huge differentiator between this business school and what I understand from many other business schools. So it's something that I've exploited significantly and in a more tangible way in a lot of research work that I've been able to be involved with.
Great, thank you. Vicki or Sarah?
Yeah, I can talk to that as well. I've been able to use Tony and the connections that he sort of made early on, and also been able to take part in some of the projects with Professor Mubarak. But I would say I'm also really interested in the domestic lens of economic development. So another professor that I've been really having conversations with is Professor Kate Cooney. She does a lot of work around urban development, and the executive in residence currently here at SOM is Andrea Levere, who is the CEO ex emeritus of Prosperity Now, so I get to work on a research project with her right now as well.
And Kate has the podcast, right?
Yes, Kate has the podcast on Opportunity Zone, so make sure you check that out.
Great, thank you. What about classes, professors outside of SOM and into the greater Yale community? Have you tapped that perhaps?
Yeah, I can lead with that question. So this semester, one of my sort of personal goals was to kind of indulge myself in like the academic experience of being at Yale. And so I'm taking 2 classes this semester at the Jackson Institute. And one of those is U.S. Economic Policy Towards Africa, taught by Ambassador Harry Thomas. And that's been a really amazing experience. It's a seminar with only 5 people. I'm the only student from SOM. The other students are 2 from Jackson and 2 African Studies masters. And it's a ton of work, but again, it's really interesting and intellectually stimulating. And in addition to just sort of, reading and talking about theory, it's taught by a practitioner who had a lifetime as a U.S. foreign ambassador and foreign service officer. And so getting to hear his stories and lessons and think about the nuance that comes with foreign policy and economic development and differences as, political regimes change, whether it's in your home country or in a foreign country, has been really rewarding to kind of my whole overall experience.
Thank you. Clubs are really important and a big part of the experience here at SOM. Anyone want to take the question of which clubs are you involved in and what leadership roles you have thus far?
I can take the first one of that. So as I mentioned in my intro, I am in one of the co-leads for Net Impact and one of the co-leads for the Economic Development Club as well. Net Impact sort of serves as the umbrella organization for social impact clubs here at SOM. I think because of the culture and the types of students that we tend to have in our student body, there's a lot of social impact related clubs here. So what Net Impact tries to do is really create that community around all different types of causes, but also we do things like attend the National Net Impact Conference that was in Detroit a few weeks ago, which was a really great networking experience for our students. And then the Economic Development Club, which Sarah and Tony are also leaders on, we do a lot, as Deborah said, around both educating, helping recruit, and building community around economic development. We do job treks. We have one coming up this Friday. We do a lot of lunch and learns with professors. So Professor Cooney and Mushfik both participated in that. We're also going to be doing a huge symposium. So the Economic Development Symposium is one of our flagship events, and that's going to be happening in February. So a lot going on in that space.
Great, thank you. Anything else that you, Sarah, or Tony want to add?
Sure. I mean, obviously, Economic Development Club was well covered. The other club that I'm very active in as a leader is the Energy Club. So Yale broadly has a history of a lot of people going into the energy field, including especially the renewables field more recently. And the club has only grown over the years. I think that this year we have like 50 or so pretty active members who are recruiting for various types of roles. So it's really exciting. And as somebody whose interests kind of are focused on an idea of economic development, but really span sectors, it's been really rewarding to get to, especially this year, meet first years who might be coming from an oil and gas industry experience and interested in renewables, people who have absolutely no energy experience, but maybe some finance experience and want to apply it to energy, or people with a similar perspective to me and kind of have a broad sectoral interest and just want to see where they can be really effective and gain some cool experiences.
Thank you. One of the questions from you all is that there's a request for the panel to talk about how your core curriculum really placed you for success in your summer internship. Does anyone want to take that one? Want to take that one, Tony?
Sure. So I spent my summer in Delhi in India working for an international development consulting firm. A specific example of where the core curriculum came in handy is I actually led a series of brown bags or lunch and learns on the topic of negotiation, something that development organizations are generally very poor at doing. And so that was an example of where I was able to take learnings from a business context and port it over to a development context, and it went over really well.
Thank you. Vicky?
Yeah, definitely. So I spent my summer partially in Philadelphia and partially in Shanghai, China. So I think it was interesting for me because one of the case studies we read in our executive class was actually the partner that I was working for. So that sort of gave me a lot of great context going in on like, hey, I know things about you that you probably don't even remember because I read this like Yale Raw case about you where we did all the research. So that was definitely one component of it. I think the other thing is that I've been out of school for so long that I've forgotten a lot of the accounting stuff that the core class teaches. So that's always helpful knowledge when it comes to like balance sheets, income statements, and really evaluating businesses from that standpoint.
I'll have to agree with that. So working in investment banking, a lot of the work was a little bit specialized. Actually, I was very well prepared because of a non-core course, the Renewable Energy Project Finance class. But I will agree, I really struggled through accounting. It is not my forte. It's not something I had ever done. And I felt like I hadn't learned anything. And then when it came to actually applying it in some of my finance classes, I realized I actually learned a lot. And so I think that probably was like the thing that stuck with me was I actually learned accounting even when I didn't think I was learning anything.
Thank you. So some of the prospects here are interested in a joint degree. And one question was posed to you specifically, Sara, whether or not you had even given any thought to FES.
It's a really good question. I actually came into SOM as a joint degree with FES. I made the decision to drop the joint degree this summer, which was a really hard decision to make. The community is really strong. The reputation of the joint degrees is really strong in a lot of sectors I'm interested in. For me, what it came down to was I got a really hard science undergrad in environmental management. And when I started to look at coursework and kind of do my own cost-benefit analysis in an additional year in school and kind of what it would mean for my career. For me personally, it didn't pan out. That being said, the joint degree program is awesome. There's also a joint degree option with Jackson. And I think that, if my calculation had landed differently, I think that both of those are really amazing opportunities.
Great, thank you. Anyone else consider? No. So one of the other questions is really around the recruitment process. And when you think of business school, it's a whole lot of people that are going for consulting, a lot of people going for IB or tech and that sort of thing. So how was it for the three of you going through that search and that recruitment process in your particular arenas?
You don't have to.
You're
all set on this one. I'll jump in first in that case. So I was making a big pivot in my career and was particularly anxious about taking my consulting background and somehow moving into international development. Not generally a career pivot that happens all that often. I sort of split my recruitment process into two parts. For the first semester, the fall semester, which we're in currently, this time last year, I used that as an opportunity to educate myself and just have a ton of conversations with people all over the world to figure out what the field even looked like. It's one thing to read the newspapers and be on listservs, but to have actual conversations and understand what's happening in the ground with practitioners was an opportunity that I was able to do during that first 6-month period. It was particularly facilitated by interactions with professors, fellow students, alumni as well. And then once you start talking to folk, it just proliferates more conversations. And so that was amazing. The second part was then actually looking for an internship. And I found that the conversations that I'd had actually lent themselves to making an internship search significantly less stressful than I was initially planning. It was due to a Yale alumni that we met during an economic development job trek, that I got an interview with the organisation that I ended up working with and may go back to full time. And so it wasn't necessarily the exhaustive recruitment process I was expecting, because I'd already built a lot of connections that were facilitated by being here and doing this program.
So networking is key.
If you're going into
Yeah.
a non-traditional career, particularly something in development, networking is more than key. It's a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my experience was the exhaustive, maybe more exhaustive and exhausting experience than I would have anticipated. So like I mentioned, my background was in development. I could go back to OPIC if I wanted. There's a lot of other organizations I know that would be looking for my skill set, but I'm really trying to differentiate the role that I play in development. I loved my work in ESG. I wasn't interested in only being an ESG practitioner. That wasn't why I came back to school. So my recruiting process, again, was in finance. I actually did not do the traditional IB recruiting. I didn't think I wanted to work in investment banking. I thought I wanted to work buy side. So private equity, mostly with smaller shops that are doing like really impactful kind of local things, but with a market returns mindset. All I did was network for like 7 months, and friends of old colleagues, went down to New York a lot, had a lot of coffee chats, actually got a lot of really positive feedback about the networking, even from people who I felt like it was kind of a reach to reach out to, but they said, thanks for getting in touch with me. They were kind of like impressed with the way that I went about it. That being said, it is extremely difficult to recruit buy side for private equity. I didn't have the background in finance, and I continued to sort of hear the message that I needed more experience in finance. And kind of along the same lines of why I wanted to come to SOM, I refused to change my background. I literally had somebody tell me that my resume looked too crunchy to work in finance, and I was like, I can't change that. Like those are my experiences. That's what I've done. I want to take that and make more sustainable investments. And so ended up applying to a position that was on CMS, on the school's job board, that a lot of other SOM people ended up applying for. They just happened to be an investment bank that was recruiting late. And I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to pretend to have some sort of experience that I didn't. And they were willing to take a chance and help train me and give me the experience that I wanted. And so it wasn't what I thought that I was going to do, but I'm definitely glad that I ended up in the position that I did. But it's really not what I want to do. I'm not really interested in the sell side. So I wouldn't say I'm quite back to square one. I think I learned a lot from the recruiting process last year, made a lot of really good contacts, and am kind of refocusing onto the buy side and seeing what opportunities for full-time are out there, who can see, what I've gained while I'm here at the SOM with some of the hard skills, as well as my background.
Thank you. Some of the questions that are coming through from the prospects are, what kinds of jobs could I even look for, and what's the name of them, and how would I even know where to find the summer internship or a full-time job? How does one go about mining where those jobs are and what the job titles are?
I think we have
I know
we generally have a lot of conversations with people like you,
Yeah.
at the career office.
Yeah.
Because the CDO is the expert in this field. So, I think sort of leaning on the CDO is how I thought about that.
Yeah. I would add, just talking to your classmates, I think that we all come in with such a diverse set of experiences that you find out that someone worked at a place that you're interested in and you didn't even know it existed, right? And so I think that to Vicky's point about net impact, there's clubs that kind of draw people with similar interests together, that when you start, networking, talking, making friends with your classmates, you can find a lot of those positions.
One of the things that I will state to Tony's point is that we have fabulous resources. So for the first years coming in, we often say that the second years are a terrific resource. They're right under the roof, and we have a who's going where or who went where Excel spreadsheet that you can filter in all different kinds of ways. And it's a really great way to say, okay, if you have your target list or companies or even in an industry space that seems kind of interesting, you can do a search and find second years to even have coffee chats with. And it's a really great way to just start to understand what this field and what this space is all about. We also have a great alumni connection. Fabulous. And they are so willing and generous with their time to be able to offer their perspective or share their path. And so that is a lifelong process and a lifelong connection that you will always have as well. So is there anything else before we go on to anything that either you, Tony, or Vicki would like to share on that? Okay. One of the things that has come to you specifically, Sara, is one of the questions was, would you have, if you could roll back the tape, would you have gone to business school right out of the Peace Corps?
No, and I think the reason is I ended up working at OPIC, and I didn't even really know what OPIC was, to be honest. If those who know that after Peace Corps you have non-competitive eligibility for U.S. federal jobs, and that sort of opened some doors for me, and I felt very fortunate. I ended up at OPIC. A lot of my friends ended up at the EPA right at the time where they were doing some layoffs or cutting hiring, and so that to be said, I had no idea I wanted to work in finance. Like, I'm an environmental scientist. In addition to applying for government jobs, I was also applying to environmental consulting firms. So I just as well could have, ended up in a very different role. Mm-hmm. And I think that that additional experience really helped me define why I wanted to get my MBA. And I know some people who did it right after Peace Corps and had, great opportunities, a really good experience. But for me, at the time, it actually didn't fit what I thought I wanted to do. And I'm really glad that I waited, just sort of in general, to apply to graduate school until I was really sure what was worth my time and money. And also, I've ended up having more opportunities in fields that I couldn't have even imagined existed, even after Peace Corps kind of opened my eyes to a lot of opportunities.
Thank you. When you look back on year one and the core curriculum that you had, everybody has the same classes, but then you have an opportunity to pick some that are a little bit more tailored to your liking and your interests. Question from the prospects: was there one class? Was there something that clicked for you or even fueled this vision and this passion that you have for this space that the students may decide at some stage to take?
Sure, I can take the first one. So it wasn't actually a class, although we do get credit for it. It was the independent research work in Sierra Leone with Professor Mubarak, and the opportunity to go over there and be hands-on on a very large-scale randomized controlled trial experimental design, and realizing that I could in fact do this, to get that experience on my resume and realize that this truly was my passion. So that was, I would say, life-changing.
Tony took mine.
Ditto.
Mine's a bit different. So at the end of last year, I was listening to a panel of women in finance. They were all alum. Mm-hmm. Most of them were working in investment management. And a question was asked, what class, looking back, are you really glad that you took? And the class was corporate finance. And all of them said it was really hard. I may or may not have passed or barely passed, but they were really glad they took it. And so I took corporate finance this fall, and I really love the class. It's challenging. The first couple case studies, even after my experience in investment banking, it was just different enough that I was, unsure about some of the modeling. But I think that the case study approach, especially with some of the electives is a really cool way to just think through like real life business application. And I've just really enjoyed that class, and I've learned a ton. And I was just reflecting with a friend who very different career interests, is planning to go into healthcare, who's in the class, and he was a little bit frustrated, and he was like, why am I doing this? I'm not sure. And I reminded him that if he's a hospital administrator, we have learned the tools in corporate finance to help him make the decision of, does part of the hospital need to be sold off to another buyer? Is there an investment in, say, a clinic, or purchasing new equipment that they need to take? And even if he's not actually going to go and do that modeling as a hospital administrator in 15 years, he has the resources to help make those decisions. So I think it's been a really cool class to kind of going back to what Tony mentioned, what am I going to be doing 20 years from now that really sort of helps me think holistically. And that's been just a really impactful class that I've really loved. And it has absolutely nothing to do with development. Like, we talk about finance as though there are zero social impacts all the time. But I really enjoy just sort of the learning from it.
Great, thank you. Tony, this one's just for you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Here we go. So the question is, what do you think the MBA gave you to help you advance in your international development career versus your getting a master's in international development?
So it's probably a longer conversation, but I thought through my own theory of change when it comes to development and the impact and competitive advantage that I could bring to the field. I was not going to become a PhD economist, and so that narrowed certain things down. I wasn't necessarily going to go directly into politics, so that narrowed things down. I determined my advantage came from my prior legal and consulting expertise, and so to leverage that, an MBA made the most sense in terms of my theory of change.
Great, thank you. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think would be important for prospective students to know?
Tons of stuff. But
I'll pare it down. So what would you say are the one or two things that you wished that you knew or someone had told you before you were coming to SOM?
I can start with that. So I came to SOM thinking that I was going to be learning a lot of like hard skills around like how to do marketing and stuff like that. But it's actually the classes where I've learned more of the softer skills that I've found incredibly valuable. So one of them in particular, interpersonal dynamics, I think is really going to be the one that has the most longevity in terms of its use for me. So focusing a little bit about that like personal growth aspect when it comes to potentially things outside of your career is also helpful.
Great, thank you.
I think that's something that I only in my second year have sort of like learned, and maybe this was just who I was listening to advice from or the advice I heard, but having a differentiated interest from kind of the consulting investment banking standard. I can constantly heard reiterated, don't get pressured into the consulting, you don't need to. And that is true if that is not what you want to do. However, if you are coming from a non-traditional background and you're looking for a little bit of skill building, there's definitely some value in learning how to case with the consulting club, whether you decide to recruit for management consulting or some of the more specialized economic development consulting that is available, and a lot of those jobs do come to us. And so that's one of those things that, I don't have any specific regrets for it, but I think I so listened to the, don't be swayed by everybody doing consulting that I didn't really take a chance to think about, there are hard skills that I want to develop, and some of the hard skills you can develop outside of the classroom through like investment banking recruiting or consulting recruiting.
Thank you. Well, we have come to the end of our program. We hope that you have had an opportunity to get a feel for this area in economic development with three terrific people. They've got very different experiences, but hopefully that has been highlighted and that you have at least more information for you, and also to hear the excitement and the connectedness that they have for Yale SOM. We thank you so much for your time and for your consideration, and we hope to see you here again. Take care.